Have you ever stared into the sea and felt it staring back at you, not in a peaceful way but in a raw, powerful way that reminds you how small you really are? The North Sea isn't just water, it's memory, pain, survival, and mystery. Sailors call it cruel, but they go anyway because someone has to carry the weight of the waves. The North Sea is known for swallowing ships even when skies are clear. It doesn't care about your plans or your engine size. It will turn steel into driftwood and men into prayers. The people who've sailed those waters carry it in their eyes long after they leave, because when the sea speaks it leaves a mark you don't forget. Let's start with the night science changed forever. January 1st, 1995, while the world was celebrating the new year, a Norwegian oil platform named Dropter was being slammed by waves. Nothing unusual at first, until a single rogue wave nearly 85 feet tall rose from nowhere and hit like a wall. It wasn't predicted, and it wasn't part of a pattern. Until that night, rogue waves were dismissed as sailor stories, myths told over cheap rum and bad weather. But the Dropter wave was recorded by machines and cameras. It was real and terrifying, and it forced scientists to reconsider what the ocean is truly capable of. Sometimes nature breaks its own rules, and when it does, lives hang in the balance. Imagine being on that platform, watching that mountain of water charge at you in the pitch black, with no time to run, nothing to grab, just the sound of your heartbeat and a wall of sea that could end it all. Right there, you're not thinking of your job or your phone, you're thinking of your soul and survival. The men survived that wave, but they never forgot it. Some say they still dream about it, wake up sweating, remembering how it sounded, how the whole platform shook. The North Sea doesn't just hit, it haunts. It doesn't give warnings or explanations, just a brutal reminder that humans are guests in its territory and not always welcome. Now let's jump to March 2025. Thick fog wrapped around two ships like a trap. The Portuguese cargo vessel So Long and the U.S. military chartered oil tanker Stena Immaculate collided under mysterious conditions. The result was a fuel spill, explosions, fireballs lighting the sea in orange and black, chaos in every direction, crews screaming, radio static, steel grinding against steel. Some sailors jumped into the freezing water, others stayed below, praying, breathing smoke. The sea that night wasn't just cold, it was wild and angry and burning. The footage of the crash shocked the world, but what most people never saw was what happened in the silence after the wreck: the drifting, the waiting, the hoping someone would come. One rescue diver said it felt like time stopped. He pulled men out of the water who were shaking, not just from cold, but from something deeper, the knowledge that they'd come face to face with death and somehow slipped past it. Again, that kind of survival changes people, makes them quiet, makes them grateful, makes them never look at the sea the same. I once met a sailor named Daniel from Ghana, humble, honest, the kind of man who smiled with his eyes. He worked supply ships in the North Sea for over a decade, sending money home. One winter night, their navigation went out in a storm, and for hours they were blind, drifting between waves with no direction, just darkness and cold. The crew panicked, people cried, men froze. Daniel didn't. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small tattered Bible soaked in oil and salt, opened it to Psalm 46 and whispered the words to himself over and over: God is our refuge and strength. Though the waters roar, we will not fear. The men around him listened. For 11 hours they floated until a passing ferry spotted them by accident. Daniel told me later he didn't just survive that night, he met God in it. He didn't shout or preach, he just believed, and somehow that belief anchored them when their engines couldn't. Sometimes survival doesn't come from power, but from presence, from peace that doesn't make sense. There are over 50,000 shipwrecks beneath the North Sea. Every one of them tells a story. Some are famous warships, others nameless fishing boats. Some sank with full crews, others went down quietly, their lights fading into the cold dark. No alarms, just silence. The sea doesn't care about rank or riches, it takes what it wants when it wants. When ships sail those waters today, they sail over ghosts, over broken promises, over prayers that never reach the shore. And while we don't see them, those stories are still there just below the surface, sometimes literally frozen in time, held by the pressure and the cold. The North Sea is more than deep, it's heavy with memory and sorrow. In 2013, a Danish cargo ship heading to the UK ran into a sudden storm. What started as light rain became wind that pushed the vessel toward a wind farm offshore, blades spinning, waves rising, crew screaming, containers sliding across deck. One sailor dislocated his shoulder holding onto a reel, trying not to fall into black water that felt alive. Had the captain turned the wheel just seconds later, they'd have been torn apart by the turbines. But they made it by inches. When they reached port, the sailor told reporters, it felt like standing between death and a miracle. No one sleeps the same after that. No one talks about the sea lightly after that. The fear stays even when you laugh. The North Sea has no mercy and no memory. It will batter you one day and look calm the next, but people remember. They remember the sound of steel groaning, the taste of salt, the way the sky disappears when the wave rises above your head. That's the part no camera catches, the feeling of being forgotten by the sky. But these aren't just stories about waves, they're stories about people and pain and faith. They're stories that remind us we're not in control, not really. And that's a hard thing to admit in a world that tells us we should be in charge of our lives and outcomes. But the sea tells the truth and it doesn't lie. Maybe your storm doesn't look like the North Sea. Maybe it's financial or emotional. Maybe it's grief. Maybe it's burnout. Maybe it's doubt. Storms don't have to be wet to be overwhelming. Sometimes they come in the form of silence, of waiting, of wondering if help is ever going to come, and if you'll have the strength to hold on. But if sailors can survive monster waves and shipwrecks and firestorms with nothing but faith and a worn Bible, maybe we can get through ours too. Maybe we can survive what feels impossible and find calm again, not because we're strong, but because we know where to anchor when everything else is adrift. Even in the storm, there is a way.